I'm Brittany Lewis with Forbes Breaking News. Senator Ben Cardin took to the Senate floor Thursday afternoon to discuss the Small Business Innovation Research Program. The Maryland Democrat described the SBIR as one of the government's most important programs. Cardin said that increasing domestic manufacturing and decreasing dependence of foreign supply chains could be a way to combat inflation. This comes as Americans are seeing prices increase at their fastest rate since the early 1980s. Here's more from Cardin.
778-803-842. That the Senate proceed to vote on the nominations in the order listed without intervening action or debate. The motions to reconsider be considered made and laid upon the table with no intervening action or debate. That no further motions be in order to the nominations. That any statements related to the nominations be printed in the record and that the President be immediately notified of the Senate's action.
Without objection. The question is on the nominations en bloc. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The nominations are confirmed en bloc.
I ask unanimous consent the Senate consider the following nominations: 242, 868, 869, 870, 871, 872, 873, 874, 875, 876, 877, 878, 879, 880, 881, 882, 883, and 884. And all nominations on the Secretary's desk in the Air Force, Army, Marine Corps, Navy, and Space Force. That the nominations be confirmed en bloc, the motions to reconsider be considered made and laid upon the table with no intervening action or debate. That no further motions be in order to any of the nominations, that the President be immediately notified of the Senate's action, and the Senate resume legislative session.
Without objection.
Mr. President, I have three requests for committees to meet during today's session of the Senate. They have the approval of the majority and minority leaders.
Duly noted.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that the Senate proceed to the consideration of SRES 603 submitted earlier today.
The clerk will report.
SRES 603, recognizing and supporting the goals and ideals of National Sexual Assault Awareness and Prevention Month.
Without objection, the Senate will proceed to the measure.
I ask unanimous consent that the resolution be agreed to, the preamble be agreed to, and that the motions to reconsider be considered made and laid upon the table with no intervening action or debate.
Without objection.
And finally, Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that when the Senate completes its business today, it adjourn until 3 p.m. on Monday, May 2nd, and that following the prayer and the pledge, the morning hour be deemed expired, the journal of proceedings be approved to date, the time for the two leaders be reserved for their use later in the day, and morning business be closed, that upon the conclusion of morning business, the Senate proceed to executive session to resume consideration of the Frost nomination. Further, that the cloture motions filed during today's session ripen at 5:30 p.m.
Without objection.
If there's no further business to come before the Senate, I ask it stand adjourned under the previous order following the remarks of Senators Cardin, Cassidy, and Sullivan.
Without objection.
I yield the floor.
The senior senator from Maryland is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise today to speak about two of the federal government's most important innovation programs, the Small Business Innovation Research Program, also known as the SBIR, and the Small Business Technology Transfer Program, or STTR for short. It's very appropriate we're having this discussion as we are about to go into conference in regards to legislation that affects America's competitiveness. The SBIR and the STTR program represent the best of government-industry partnerships. The programs harness the creativity and ingenuity of America's entrepreneurs and innovators to solve the most pressing public health and national security challenges of our time. The programs are also primed to help our nation rebuild our domestic production capacity, to reduce our reliance on foreign supply chains for critical products, and reduce costs for the American people. I would like to remind my colleagues that fighting inflation and rebuilding our domestic manufacturing capacity are intricately linked. When factories close, when products sit in shipping containers in ports, when production capacity decreases due to sick employees, and when products take longer to get from the warehouse to the store, prices go up. I have no doubt that every senator has heard from businesses in all sectors of the economy about solving this critical issue. According to a recent survey the National Federation of Independent Businesses conducted, more than half of all small business owners reported a significant impact due to supply chain disruptions. 30% reported that the disruptions were causing a moderate impact, and 14% reported a mild impact. Only 5% of those surveyed reported that they were unaffected by the disruptions. Of the small business owners affected by disruptions, 80% reported that the disruptions have caused them to miss out on business opportunities. I am very pleased to hear that President Biden announced during his State of the Union address that rebuilding America's domestic production capacity is central to his administration's plan to fight inflation and keep our nation secure. SBIR and STTR are two of the best tools in the federal government's toolkit to achieve our goal. Congress created the SBIR in 1982 to increase the participation of small businesses in federally funded research and development opportunities in areas ranging from clean energy to advanced manufacturing. Under the program, federal agencies that budget at least $100 million annually for outside research must allocate a portion, 3.2% since fiscal year 2017, to support R&D in small businesses. There are 11 federal agencies and departments currently in the program, including the Department of Defense, Department of Energy, Department of Education, and Health and Human Services. The program awards funds in 3 phases. Phase 1, awards are worth up to $225,000 and may be used to conduct a feasibility study to determine an idea's scientific and commercial promise. Phase 2 awards up to $1.5 million and may be used to conduct further R&D on the feasibility of turning an idea into a commercial product. And Phase 3 does not involve award of funds, but denotes that an idea is ready to move from the laboratory to the marketplace. During the commercialization phase, small businesses must raise funding from the private sector or secure non-SBIR federal funds. Congress created the STTR program in 1992. While the program is similar to the SBIR in structure, utilizing a similar 3-phase progression, the STTR awards go to small businesses engaging in collaborative R&D with federal labs, as well as nonprofit educational and scientific institutions. The program requires federal agencies and departments that spend at least $1 billion on outside research to allocate at least 0.45% of the funds to STTR opportunities. Most people may not be familiar with SBIR or STTR, but they definitely recognize the products and companies and the programs that it helped create. Sonicare electric toothbrush, iRobot, LASIK eye surgery all received SBIR, STTR funding when they were startups. Qualcomm, which makes computer chips, semiconductors, and other technologies critical to our national communication infrastructure, also received funding from these programs. Progeny Systems, a small business based in Manassas, Virginia, received more than 300 SBIR and STTR awards to conduct research over a 20-year period. Progegy's research produced technology that drastically improves the Navy's torpedo capacity. The company is now the sole supplier of torpedoes to the Navy, and yes, it is still a small business. This is another benefit of these programs. They expand and diversify the supplier base from which the federal agencies source goods and services, increasing competition and investment in high-growth sectors which reduce costs over time. On the manufacturing front, several agencies, including NASA and the Department of Defense, are currently funding research on advanced manufacturing techniques, such as 3D printing and glass that can handle temperatures as high as 900 degrees, which would be revolutionary, our ability to monitor nuclear reactors and power plant furnaces to prevent accidents. Simply put, SBIR and STTR are invaluable to our national security, and we should fund these programs adequately to rebuild our domestic supply chain. Unfortunately, authority for these critical programs will expire at the end of September unless Congress acts to extend them. The House and Senate will go to conference soon on America Competes Act, which includes a 5-year extension of SBIR and STTR. I urge all my colleagues, especially those who will be conferees, to support this critical provision. The Junior Senator from Iowa has submitted a motion to instruct conferees to couple this effort to extend the SBIR program and the STTR program by 5 years with authorizing language to prevent China and Russia from acquiring critical national security technology developed by the program. I agree with the Senator that the United States needs to safeguard technologies from being compromised and stolen, and I am pleased that the House Competes Act bill includes safeguards to prevent our adversaries from affecting our innovation, not just China and Russia, but all foreign countries of concern, including Iran and North Korea. This effort builds off of Section 223 of the fiscal year 2021 National Defense Authorization Act that provides protections and requires disclosure to guard against foreign influence on federally funded research and development. So I will support the motion from the Senator from Iowa will make, but we must recognize that if we are able to compete with China and Russia, extending the authorization for SBIR and STTR are critical. I hope she will work with me to keep this important program from shuttering its doors on September the 30th. I would like to add that this issue is very important to my constituents in Maryland. Our state ranks #1 in the nation in R&D spending due to the presence of federal and academic research institutions such as the National Institutes of Health, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, Johns Hopkins University, and the University of Maryland. I've had many discussions with state government officials and leading scientists in Maryland who have told me that one of the most sensible steps we can take to improve the SBIR and STTR program would to make these programs permanent. The research SBIR and STTR funds often continues for several years before producing a product ready to go to the market. Researchers need to know that these programs will not disappear in the middle of year-long research projects. It is our responsibility to make sure that we act timely so that there is no lapse in these programs or reduced funding that is critically needed for these programs' success. Any such action would be short-sighted and would have a devastating impact on small businesses engaged in cutting-edge research nationwide. Reducing the size of these programs or allowing them to lapse altogether would hinder our efforts to restore the production of critical products. I recently convened a hearing of the Senate Small Business Committee to examine the impacts of supply chain disruptions on small business. One of our witnesses, Serdar Kote, who leads an organization that advocates for increased public and private sector investment in America's manufacturing sector, called the SBIR and the STTR one of the really good tools in the toolbox and urged the committee to strengthen the programs to support even more researchers. I could not agree more. Instead of leaving the researchers who are inventing the tools that will power the economy of the future guessing about the SBIR and STTR, we in Congress have an opportunity, and I would say an obligation, to reauthorize these programs before they expire in September. We should also make them permanent, which both the Pentagon and NASA have urged us to do. This is in our national security interest as well as our economic interest and fairness to small businesses. Madam President, Arthur C. Clarke wrote, "New ideas pass through 3 periods. 1, it can't be done. 2, it probably can be done, but it's not worth doing. And 3, I knew it was a good idea all along." The SBIR and the STTR programs help visionary entrepreneurs get through 1 and 2 to reach 3. Getting to 3 makes America stronger and more prosperous. Let us make sure that we act in time. With that, I would suggest the absence of a quorum.
Clerk will call the roll. Ms. Baldwin.